I still think it's going to be Knicks in 6, but they do have a chance to go 2-up in the series tonight. Our New York Post sports reporter, Jared Schwartz, is on assignment at the Garden again tonight. So let's get you guys ready for some Game 2 action. Jared, let's go straight into Game 2. First and foremost, thanks for hopping on with us. I got a stat for you from Land of Basketball, and it says nearly 93% of teams down 2-0 drop the series. The Pistons are going to try everything they can do to try and sneak one before they head on back to Detroit. I mean, they were up 8 until that 21-0 run in the fourth quarter. So if the Knicks win Game 2 tonight, you feel like they win the series.
Yeah, that's why these game twos are so pivotal sometimes. A road team starts on the road, obviously, the first two games. You're really just looking to win one. You're looking to split them, and all of a sudden you steal home court coming back home. On the other side, you lose both of them. All of a sudden, it feels like the series is over. The higher seed has all the momentum, has all the advantages. These game twos can be tricky because all it does is take one win on the road, and all of a sudden, those good vibes from game one for the Knicks, they disappear, and you're going on the road, and it's anybody's series. So yeah, 2-0 is a lot different than 1-1. And like you said, there were large stretches of that game the Knicks were in trouble. You know, they were down 9 points at one point. They needed a 21-0 run to come back and take the lead. There were signs of concern, early, for the first three quarters, especially in that third quarter. And who would have thought it was going to be Cam Payne that was going to spark the Knicks in that fourth quarter? And, while that was nice in game one, you can't necessarily count on that going, forward in the series. It is Cam Payne at the end of the day. So, yeah, game two is pivotal. It's 2-0 with all the advantages, or it's 1-1 going to Detroit, and it's anybody's series.
And if it's 1-1, we're talking about a Detroit team that doesn't really respect the Knicks at all. And if they have that confidence before heading back to the D, that could be I don't want to necessarily call it a trap game 3, but it could be a lot tougher for the Knicks than what it could be if they're already up 2-0. You're writing a story about Josh Hart. We're used to seeing him pretty much not coming off the floor in playoff games, but he only logged 7 minutes and no points in the first half. He was a complete non-factor for a lot of the game, but then he was all over the comeback. 13 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists is what he finished with on the night. Do you feel like Josh Hart has to be the X factor, not only in this series, but just the playoffs as a whole for the Knicks to have any chance to make a run?
Yeah, this was a new experience, as I wrote, for Josh Hart, and specifically in the playoffs. You remember last year in the playoffs, he was playing full games at times.
Yeah.
He averaged almost 42 minutes a game. He played the full 48, I think, 3 times, and he played once a full 53 minutes once. The full 48 in regulation and the full 5 minutes in overtime. So he's someone that Tibbs likes to keep out there as long as possible. And he got in that early foul trouble. He picked up his third foul early in that second quarter, which meant he went to the bench. He finished the first half, like you said, only 7 minutes and no points. And who would have thought that Landry Shamet would play 10 minutes in the first half and Josh Hart would play 7?
Yeah.
And I asked him about that, and he said, he was begging Tibbs to come back in the game, but he understood why he had to be on the bench. And then by the second half, he's the Josh Hart that everybody became accustomed to. He was hitting key layups during that 21-0 run. He was forcing turnovers on the defensive end. He was pushing the ball in transition, and yeah, in terms of X factor, he's definitely an X factor, and specifically his shooting, which I wrote about a couple of days ago also, actually. The Pistons are putting their center on him. Jalen Duren is guarding Josh Hart because they don't respect his outside shooting. Duren is not coming outside of, the paint to guard him. They're leaving him open because, Cat can shoot, Brunson can shoot, Bridges can shoot. The Knicks have 4 other guys out there that can shoot. They're leaving Josh Hart open. If he can make them pay, all of a sudden that game plan goes to the wayside for the Pistons. All of a sudden they can't send those extra defenders at Jalen Brunson, and that's definitely an X factor. And it's something last year he shot great from 3-point range in the first series against the 76ers, and he actually had that series ceiling 3.
Yeah.
And then in the second series against the Pacers, he shot horribly, and it did serve as an X factor. So that's definitely something to watch, and not even just is he making his threes, is he taking them in the first place?
Talk about what all heart means to this team. Like all heart, all 48. This is a guy that can play the entire game. He breathes all types of life and energy into the building with the way that he gets nitty and gritty on the defensive side of the things and when it comes to getting crashing the boards. But if he's hitting those shots, Jared, oh, the guard's going to go absolutely crazy, and they're going to need that tonight to take game two. Another thing, another storyline everyone's talking about is Asar Thompson's been the one who's been guarding Jalen Brunson. JB dropped 34 game one. Thompson was hit with 5 fouls in just 23 minutes. 4 of those were when he was guarding Jalen Brunson. He said Jalen Brunson is good at selling fouls. Is Jalen Brunson flopping? Because you might get the calls at the Garden, but not when you take it on the road to Detroit.
Yeah, I think we were all waiting to see how long it was going to take for the first Pistons player to complain about the refs in game one. You saw it right from the get-go. These Pistons are trying to be, the bad boy Pistons of old. They look at themselves as a tough, physical, in-your-face, trash talk kind of team. And right from the get-go, they were bumping, they were hand checking, when guys were inbounding the ball, they were hovering over Jalen Brunson and stuff. And the refs were calling it early. And like you said, we'll see, will they call it the same at the Garden as they will in Detroit, at Little Caesars Arena. Look, this is nothing new for Jalen Brunson. He's one of the best players in the league at using his body. Is he flopping? No. Is it some gamesmanship and creating contact? Yes. He's generously listed at 6'2", so he's got to use and he's not that quick, so he's got to use his body in creative ways. He's mastered the art of kind of dribbling and stopping right in front of a defender, and going straight up and allowing the defender to kind of jump into his back, and they'll call that, and it is a foul, and it's nothing new. It's what makes Jalen Brunson great. It's where he gets a lot of his points. It's what allows him to get into the lane without being quick or big. And now we'll see how the Pistons to adjust, to the way the refs were calling the game and the way Jalen Brunson was able to attack them.
Which puts even more pressure on the Knicks to take game two because, again, you may not be able to get those calls on the road like you did in game 1 and 2 at the Garden, where game 1, Jalen Brunson took a game high 10 free throws. So he's getting to the line. He's getting those calls. But again, you may not get those up game 3 and game 4. Really quick side note, he was selected, talking about Jalen Brunson, he was selected as a finalist for the NBA's Clutch Player of the Year. Does he have your vote?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all year you see when the game, when it's time to seal the game and it's time to put the game away, he's where the Knicks go. And look, he struggled early in game 1. He didn't shoot well the first quarter of the first half. Then he changed his shoes. Tom Thibodeau joked that he put on his cape, but really he became the superhero that the Knicks needed. He ended up with 34 points. I think it's almost hard to believe because he was struggling so much early in the game, and then all of a sudden you look up and he's got over 30 points, and it's down the stretch the ball is going to be in his hands. He's going to be taking the shots. He's been one of the most clutch players in the league all year, and he showed it in game 1 that he might be struggling early, but he's not going to shy away from shooting later. He's got that mentality that it doesn't matter what happened for 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters. It's the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game. He's going to be the superstar that the Knicks need.
Real quick, again, you're heading to the Garden in a little bit to be on assignment for tonight. Do you think that Game 2's energy is going to be able to match Game 1's fourth quarter energy?
It has to. That 21-0 run was certainly something special and obviously something you don't see all the time, if ever. But the Garden is the Garden. It's loud, it's boisterous, it's raucous. It serves as a sixth man almost. And it's got to be, it's game 2, it's Madison Square Garden. The fans are riled up. We saw after the game that, they in classic fashion, they took to the streets and were chanting. And, I've been in a lot of stadiums and in a lot of arenas. There's nothing like playoff basketball at Madison Square Garden. It's a different beast.
All right, Jared, have a great time tonight, man. Appreciate you hopping on.